Hello and welcome to Books to Last, the podcast that challenges readers to pick the only 5 books they may take with them when cast away to a mystery remote location. As ever, I'm joined by a book-loving guest, and this episode I'm joined by Meg. Welcome, Meg. It's so great to have you on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
I am really excited to get into your list, but for the benefit of any listeners who might not know you or be familiar with you, could you tell us a little bit about you and just books and reading?
Yes. So I think the first 3 most important things to say is that I love trying different genres and being surprised by books. I love getting into very in-depth chats about books with new people. And I love finding new bookshops and coffee shops. So putting all 3 of those things together, I'm very lucky because I now run a book club that enables me to do all of those things every month. And I absolutely love doing it.
Amazing. I love because you have a moving book club, don't you?
Yes.
You go around in different areas and different places. And I really like that as just from an accessibility point of view, because sometimes, you know, what the crowd you need isn't in your local area. So I think it's a really great idea.
And there's so many local businesses around here. I think when people say like Stoke or Staffordshire, people automatically like there's nowhere to go. There's so many places to go that are gorgeous and they just need to get out there. Going somewhere and everyone's saying, oh, I'm going to bring my kids here, I'm going to bring my family here. I'm like, yes, go out and support these places because it costs money to run.
Exactly. Honestly, kids will, if they'll do nothing else for you, they will bribe you to find new places to take them. Because honestly, no one's a worse critic than a small child who's bored. They're like, this place is rubbish. I really like this place. No, there's no good juice. There's nothing good to play with. There's nothing good to look at. Yeah, they've got high standards. What, have you always been a reader? Have you been a lifelong reader, or is it something you've come to as an adult?
So I have lots of vivid memories as a kid with books, but I'm not sure I was necessarily reading them. But what I was doing was collecting them and organizing them on my floor into different color coordinated piles and rating which ones sounded the best and looked the best. And I think over time that really evolved into a hobby that was actually reading the books, although I still have color coordinated bookshelves.
A bookstagrammer in training. Therefore, it's cool. Yeah, I do think it's like that. There's like a meme, isn't there, that circulates that's collecting books and reading books are 2 very different hobbies.
And sometimes one of them spikes and the other slumps, and I'm like, no, we've got to correct this because you do not have unlimited funds.
Yeah, it's always the books collecting that spikes. It's never the reading.
No. And then sometimes you're just like, oh, okay, that's £60 spent on books.
And 3 books now in the prices these days. It's insane. Although, that being said, we're very lucky to have affordable books in this country because having gone to America recently,
it's insane.
Yeah, I think it should be illegal that they charge as much money as they do for books. It's ridiculous.
I actually can't believe it. And sometimes people go over there specifically to get like the US covers. And I'm thinking that is a hell of a commitment.
I went to like half-price books and like a few, and like what's it called? Book Exchange? I don't know, but there's a few like more budget-friendly ones that I managed to get some pretty good deals from. But generally speaking, if you're going to somewhere like a new bookstore, the prices are insane. And I think it's Germany, a friend of mine told there's like laws about what you can charge for books in Germany. Like there is like set prices that you're not allowed to go over. And I'm like, that is how it should be. It should be accessible for everyone. But yeah, I know what you mean, spending on books. Especially during the pandemic, every time I felt sad, I went and ordered books on the internet, which is quite a lot. Which I'm very lucky that I could do that. But also, and my husband was none the wiser because he was out working and I was working from home.
I had them under the bed.
So he wasn't there when all the deliveries came, and he didn't know enough about my book collection to know when it was growing, until the fact that like I think I had 1 billing bookshelf at the start of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And then by the end of it, I needed 3. But it wasn't until I said to him, I was like, I need some more bookshelves for the office because there's not enough room. And he's like, wait, how's that happened? When have you got books? And I'm like,
finally, it might be going on here. And are you okay? Seriously.
Not good. But we live and learn, trying to be more mindful about my consumerism if I can.
Yeah.
I use the excuse that I buy local, though. So I'm supporting local businesses.
And it's just a fear of missing out for me sometimes. Like, when I see everyone reading about something, I'm like, I really can't help myself.
My problem's more if I see or hear about a book or a series that I think I'm going to love, and I've got a strong feeling I'm going to love it, and they start releasing special editions before I've had a chance to read it.
Wow.
I get very, what if this becomes my new favourite book and it's the book that I love more than anything in the world, and then I can't get any of the special editions because they've all sold out and people are selling them for like £500 each. So I buy them just in case I love it.
Wow.
But then I end up with a lot of special editions of books that I haven't read and have no emotional connection to.
And then someone comes in and they're like, you must love this series. This is a gorgeous copy.
Yeah, definitely read all of it front to back, 100%. So you said you jump around a lot of genres.
Yeah.
What genres would you say you always gravitate towards? Like when you want to pick something up, what is your default that you go to?
My comfort zone is definitely like golden retriever, fluffy romance energy. That you know that not a single thing is going to go wrong. But if it does, it'll be resolved in 3 pages.
Yes. Miscommunication is the worst thing that happens to anyone in a romance novel.
Fortunately, my book club is made up of people that have got much more diverse tastes than me. So they're slowly educating me about other genres. But I do also just like a lot of contemporary fiction. The occasional thriller I can handle. Otherwise, I will just be walking outside with constant paranoia. Some classics. I will try anything, I think, as long as the cover doesn't have a picture of a horrible rag doll that's been murdered or something, I can deal with it.
Yeah, I think I'm scared of horror, but I know what you mean. Like, I've never really picked up thrillers because it's just not like it's the suspense. I think I find it really hard to live in that space of I don't know what's happening, I don't know what's gonna happen, and like the almost artificial, because that's the whole point of the genre, the artificial building of suspense, as opposed to in other genres, it just doesn't feel the same. So I don't necessarily gravitate towards those myself, but I know what you mean. I like gothic literature, which is about as close to horror, right?
Yeah, our book club pick this month is a gothic thriller, and it's very much like the dark house on the hill. It's got the mystery family inside.
Yeah. It sounds like we're match made in heaven in terms of book taste, so I'm looking forward to this list. You're going to pick 5 books to take with you. Whereabouts do you want to be cast away to? Because as I'm sure you may or may not know, you don't need to go to a desert island, but you
And I wouldn't.
If you want.
No, seriously, no. So as soon as I thought, like, you're in a castaway situation, you've got to pick these books, I gravitated towards the coffee shop that's in Legends and Lattes, the cozy fantasy place.
It's a good coffee shop.
Because that is the coffee shop that I'm most... It's got a little, like, mouse-like man making all of these cinnamon pastries. You've got constant coffee. You've got music. And then when you're a little bored of your book, you can listen into all the conversations between barbarians, the succubuses.
I don't know whether you'd have to be invisible or they'd have to be invisible for the castaway on your own thing to work. But
We can work with it. You need that. They'd be like, oh, there's a corner that's just reading constantly.
he's not allowed to talk to anyone.
And my only other impression is that I have my dog with me as well, because she's an emotional support dog.
Animals are allowed to come.
Okay, great.
Animals are allowed to come. My dog isn't allowed to come with me because he's incredibly irritating.
Right. Man will just sleep and eat. Fine.
I don't mean that, Monty, if you're listening. I love you, obviously. You're very fluffy. You just don't like letting me read. He will lie on my book in front of me. Yeah, he's like a cat. I think he's a dog who thinks he's a cat/person.
This is taking your attention away from me. Unacceptable.
Yeah, and then when that doesn't work, he'll go and ring his bell to go outside. You don't need to go outside.
That's really cat code.
Yeah, we both know that you don't need to go outside. You're just doing this to get me off. Yeah. This is just rude. I'll never be able to sit still for too long with him around. Okay, I do love the Legends and Lattes Cafe. I remember when I read that this year. I immediately started baking cinnamon buns because, like, I'd not made them for years, but I had a really good recipe for cinnamon buns.
I don't think that can be read without snacks and coffee, personally.
Yes, it's very difficult to get through without that. And I want to make the thimblets because there's a recipe in the back of the book.
Yes, do them.
Yeah, I really want to make the thimblets. So I'm going to have a go at some point when I make the time for the book.
Yeah, so this is where I'm going to be like, hold up with my 5 books. This is going to...
Great. Okay, we've got our location.
Yeah.
Let's dive straight in. What is the first book? No particular order. Yeah.
I have to say, I have felt a lot of pressure to get this exactly right. It's like Ross from Friends when he was asked for like his 5 brushes and he's laminating the card and everything. I was like, I need to get this spot on. But ultimately, I probably will change my mind a lot after this. So if future me is listening, that is okay. My first one, though, I am pretty set on, and that is Pride and Prejudice, but specifically specifically the copy that my boyfriend got me, which has got all of the handwritten letters in. So you get to take them out and feel as though you've got the poem. I just felt full. If I'm
I've not
stranded
seen
alone,
this edition.
Oh, well, no, I'll show you this. If I'm stranded alone and I'm feeling a bit lonely, I will feel as though I've got poems from like Mr. Darcy to come and his love for me. Okay, I can handle life again now.
Yeah, I adore Pride and Prejudice. Where did you come into contact? Did you read it yourself or did you read it because of school? I know I read it because of school.
Yeah, doing English literature, it was on just a list of stuff to read over the summer to prepare for coursework, and I ended up being like, oh, this is just a drag. And then I thought, oh my God, I get it. I actually get it. This sounds like it's just going straight into my brain.
Yeah.
And then I get into a vicious cycle of reading it, watching the TV series, reading it, watching the TV series.
It's so good. I love it so much. I might actually have to rewatch it soon.
Yeah. It actually takes the language straight from the book, and you never see adaptations that do that. They always try and make it their own, and this TV series is like, no.
We are the
using
BBC.
James.
We are the BBC. This is not how we do things here. There is source material. The woman who plays Mrs. Bennet, Pam from Gavin and Stacey, I just can't.
Her voice like goes through me in it, and I'm like, this is perfect casting.
It's some of the most flawless casting in the history of all of television. Genuinely, it's so good, and I cannot take her seriously in it. But she is obviously the perfect Mrs. Bennet.
Yeah.
Because I watched Gavin and Stacey first as a young, impressionable person, and all I can hear is her as Pam in the back of my head whenever she's talking, but it's still perfect. I love Pride and Prejudice. I read it for school as well. I read it in 3 days. We were being set like chapters, and I literally stayed up until something stupid like 3 o'clock in the morning to finish one night. I could not put it. But I was the same. I've not done a lot of classics before then. I very much like my fantasy books, my middle grade stuff, and then I started it, and I wasn't expecting to like it, but it's a bit like Shakespeare, although more accessible than Shakespeare, where once your brain kind of clicks into that code and that like language and way of speaking, it's actually really easy to understand.
Because and then you'll chat with someone in modern day and be like, why are you not speaking like me?
It's so good. So I'm interested, who's your favourite? Is it the
obvious one? It's definitely Lizzie. Obviously soft spots for Darcy and her dad. And I think the older I'm getting as well, the more I can understand Lydia as a character, as much as she does infuriate me. I'm seeing different layers to her when I come back to it each time. And yeah, I feel like with this version, I'd be sat and looking at the handwriting and being like, oh, does that fit with the character or not? So I could spend hours not just reading it, but doing some real analysis.
Yeah. But obviously making any notes that you might have not in that version. That will do.
That's a special one. I think with a lot of these choices, I'm trying to beat the system and give myself as much material to work with as possible.
Yeah. That's the way to go with it. Most people just go, okay, what are the top 5 books I've read? The big notes I've read. They'll go on their list and they'll go, which are my favourite books that have got the most pages? And those are the ones.
These are not my favourite books. These are the ones where I think I could spend the most enjoyment with them.
There is no way to make the list. There is only what you feel in that moment. Yeah. Most of the people who were on the podcast years ago, because it has been going for 4 years now, which is insane to say.
It's so impressive.
It's been going on 4 years on and off. For the people who did it 4 years ago, I'd love to know what they think of their own.
Yes.
Lists of the
Oh my God, you'll have to do that. Get some second impressions.
Okay, so Pride and Prejudice got a classic, a flawless start.
Exactly.
It's a flawless masterpiece. What is the second book in the time?
I feel a bit nervous saying this because it is another classic, but it's in very much a different direction. So it's The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, the short stories.
Fair enough.
And it's specifically, because I'm clearly being so detailed in this, the Penguin cloth-bound classic version.
Yeah.
Because it's got all of the history of the author, all of the details of his other works, what was going on in his life, and all of the footnotes. So you can spend ages just getting really in the detail of what exactly is this obscure reference here. And it's got 23 different short stories in. So again, I think I'm getting value out of my book.
Yes, you are definitely getting the boat most likely. Have you read all of the Sherlock Holmes stories, or is Adventure your main go-to?
I've read all of them short stories, but not all of the novels, because I wanted to spread them out as much as possible, given that it's a finite amount of readers there, and I really do love them. Not just to see what he wrote at the time, but to think about like how different people have then taken inspiration from that to form all of these modern day impressions.
Have you watched many of the? There's like a brilliant on-screen adaptations. Is your favourite the Benedict Cumberbatch one? It is. It is.
The last season I could have done without it, went a bit too twisted for me, but the first few seasons, like, absolutely. It was very much a golden era when it was Doctor Who, followed by Sherlock. Bless.
I recently I've started watching Supernatural for the first time.
Okay,
with
what's
my
this?
love. And I was a huge like Sherlock and Doctor Who fan when I was growing up, but I never completed the trifecta of Super Who Lock because that was like all the Tumblr girls used.
Oh my god! And I feel such a fool out of this.
So Super Who Lock was like generally, if you like any of them, it's likely you like all of them.
Okay,
yes.
I'm
So Supernatural, Doctor Who, and Sherlock, and it's specifically those series. But I have only recently completed the trifecta, as it were.
And do you feel like you've been elevated to a higher level now?
Honestly, I think it's a good thing I didn't watch Supernatural when I was younger, because it would have taken over my entire personality.
Really?
Like, I would have been, I like to think, probably not true, my husband might have some opinions about this, I like to think I can keep a healthy distance between me and my obsessions now.
And then I have never met a Doctor Who fan that's been able to keep that healthy distance.
I like to think that I've got it in control, and like completely under control, especially when I get into things now. Which I do think, because it can't take over my life, because I have a dog and children and a job, and they all require me to be in places at certain times, and I can't essentially give up my entire life in service of worshipping this one specific thing of pop culture like I would let myself do when I was a teenager. So it's a good job I didn't watch Supernatural then, because, I mean, I like to think I don't have a type in terms of guys, but I 100% do, and Dean Winchester is 100% that is.
And what is the Supernatural though?
Oh, so it's one of those classic 90s TV shows where it's let's say 90s, early 2000s TV shows that it's a Monster of the Week type TV show, kind of like Doctor Who, kind of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Smallville. So the format is somewhat repetitive, and there's usually an overarching narrative to the whole series, so they've got a big bad to fight at the end, and a lot of it's leading up to that. But it's basically just like these two brothers who go out and they fight demons and vampires and werewolves and all the supernatural things that live in the world. And that's basically that. They drive around in a cool car and they sing and they act all cool and they do that.
Again, I'm trying the whole thing. Yeah. I need to become a Super Who Lock girl. This is my new goal.
Honestly, highly recommend it. We've been watching it from the start. There's 17 seasons of Supernatural. It's by far the so Doctor Who's the longest, obviously, because it's still going. Yeah. It's been going for about 1,000 years. I've not watched all of Classic Who, to be fair.
No, my dad has tried to force it on me many times, and I'm like, hun, it happened. It was great for you. I'm here, but no.
Yeah, I like the Fourth Doctor scarf. Aside from that, start at Christopher Eccleston. That's my start point. But yeah, Doctor Who's the longest one, and then Supernatural was like 17 seasons, and obviously Sherlock was only 3. Because, let's be honest, Benedict Cumberbatch and Martin Freeman got expensive real fast. But, yeah, great. It's a great series. And I think Sherlock's a really interesting one to go to the source material on. Because I always had this idea that Sherlock would be difficult to read. Like, it would be like Dickens, one of those old classics where I didn't want to read it because I'd struggle through it and I'd find it really hard to get through. But it's really accessible language because of how it was written.
And it's funny because Arthur Conan Doyle actually found the Sherlock stories quite cringe. Like, he was reluctant to write it. He was like, I should be doing more serious writing. And yet, this is the stuff that people are like, no, this is great. And I was reading one of the stories earlier, and just to remind myself of why I loved it so much. And it's called The Red-Headed League. And the story is so silly that they put an advert in the paper for ginger-haired people. Yeah. Specifically to get this one guy to come along. Because his shop backs onto a bank, so they can build a tunnel under his shop so that they can rob this bank. So this guy comes to Sherlock and was like, So I got employed because I had this glorious red hair, and now
Yeah.
they fired me. And Sherlock's like, interesting. And there's been a bank robbery, which is right behind your shop.
Yeah.
Let's connect these things.
There is actually, so there's a podcast, a fiction podcast by, have you heard of The Rest is Politics?
Yes, my dad loves this Sherlock podcast.
Sherlock, no, honestly. So it's modern day retellings of all the Sherlock stuff. And they do that one. They do the redheaded lady.
They do that in there.
They do that one. And it's very funny.
Oh. I started listening to it and I couldn't really get that into it. I think because to begin with, there's a lot of stop and start, but maybe I need to get into a specific story.
I like how they fully committed to the idea that, like, John Watson is an amateur podcaster who's trying to do a true crime podcast. They've fully committed to the idea that they don't want perfect quality recordings, and but in a way that still feels very polished with the way it's produced. It's a very well made, really good series.
But even that, the fact that it's now gone on to like podcast
And it's 2023, 2024, it's mad.
I just think you've got to be proud. If he was here now, you've got to be proud that the things that have come out of your brain has gone on to do this.
Either that, or he'd be banging his head against the wall saying, "I wrote real literature in this."
So absolutely, it's 100% that. I think it's mortified that this is happening.
Everything I've produced, this question, absolutely furious. Unlike Dickens, who would just be happy that people were spending money on his work, like, because he was just.
And I find it interesting as well that Doyle was into all of the supernatural stuff. Like when Agatha Christie went missing, he went and said, "Oh, should we talk to a psychic?" And I'm like, wow, you were that way inclined and had all these beliefs, but you've made a detective that's so thoroughly based in logic and observation.
I did enjoy the Sherlock books when I read them. The ones of them I've not read all of them, but I do think I lean more Agatha Christie in that's my preferred, but mainly Poirot.
Yeah.
Some of the standalone stuff I also read, but I'm not a big Miss Marple fan myself, personally.
I've been reading all of short stories as well because they collected them into the just seasonal edition when I was but too few stories to have on the list, whereas you've got good value for money here.
Exactly.
But I did read her biography and I learned a lot from it, and she was such an interesting person.
She's fascinating.
And she's also the most successful playwright of all time. And never knew that. Why is that not getting more? I saw it was like Shakespeare Day the other day.
Yeah.
Does Agatha Christie have a day? Maybe she does, but I didn't hear about it.
No, she's really exceptional. I listened to You're Dead to Me did a podcast about her life, and she had some difficult times, like her marriage was not very good. She basically took the surname Christie. She was like, "I'll be taking that. It sounds much better than mine. You could jog on."
Yes.
And she was just like, she's an impeccable. But we're talking about Sherlock.
Oh no.
But yes, sorry, I'll go on a million tangents, don't worry about it. Enola Holmes was another sort of adaptation, which I was surprised to enjoy as much as I did. So
I normally don't like twisting things for the sake of it, and I thought maybe it'll be a bit gimmicky, but it was good.
Yes, I like Sherlock in that one. He's very funny.
Yeah.
The second one is also very good. I do like it. I didn't expect to, but we watched it and I was surprised by how much I liked it.
Yeah.
I really love turning to my husband and my kids and just go, "'Tis I."
Oh, shout out to Mycroft as well, because it's such a glorious character.
Mycroft he's probably my favourite character in the Sherlock Holmes book because he's just hilarious all the time.
In nature.
He's the only person who thinks Sherlock is a complete waste of Honestly, the potential you could have if you didn't just spend yourself on time messing drugs. Come on, Sherlock. Get your life together, man.
Classic Big Brother energy.
Okay, so we're third book. We're midway through. What is the third book?
So I'm actually getting into more modern territory.
Okay.
We were talking about A Court of Thorns and Roses. I've not gone that way, but I have gone Throne of Glass because...
The first one? No. I was getting...
So I know that you said I could only choose one in the series, but I do have an argument that I should get two of them because they are a tandem read.
Oh, you don't know? I don't know that one.
I've got those two. So when I read Throne of Glass, I didn't do the tandem read. And
no, I did. I read them one after another.
Since then, everyone's told me how good it is. So I think, what a great time. I'm stranded. I've got nothing else to do.
I'm not going to let you take the thing. Purely for the fact that Tower of Dawn is terrible.
Everyone says it's got completely new life to it when you read it in the context of Empire of Storms.
Okay.
And I went online to see if there is a version that puts them into one book, and there is. It's over £200, but there is one. So it's one book. It's like 1,300 pages, but they are together.
So it's the same length as the Camp in Monte Cristo. Great. Okay, so for the benefit of listeners who might not be following where we're going, so the books you would like to take are The Tower of Dawn and Empire of Storms by
6 and 7 in
Sarah.
the States. Yeah.
If you had to pick one of them,
Empire of Storms.
Empire of Storms, because it's got a better characters.
This one. And I did and ah about choosing the last one, but I think build up for the best because you don't know what exactly is going to happen. And they're in these two books, different parties going around fantasy world trying to obtain allies for this war that's coming.
Yeah, it's like a heist crew ensemble.
Yeah,
kind of thing. Yeah, it's a really good one. I do like that one. That being said, I diss Tower of Dawn. I really like the Prince, and I've forgotten all of the names for that series.
Dorian.
No, not that one. From the one that, what's her name? The girl who starts off the book with, spoiler alert, starts off the book with Kale.
She starts off the book with Kale.
Yeah, they're together but not together.
The main person?
In Tower of Dawn.
Oh.
No.
Oh, you
No.
now.
The girl who begins with it. Anyway, the Prince, Nesrin, yeah, sure,
Yeah.
her. The guy she ends up
Yes.
with.
Okay. I don't know the name either.
Yeah, it begins with an S. I want to say it's Tack or Silla.
That sounds-
or something like that. It's
Yeah.
definitely got a Q in it. Definitely begins with an S. But he's wonderful. I really like him. I have not, listeners, I have not read these books in many moons, and they've all got names that aren't real names.
Yes. I am trying to take a break so that I can reread it and maybe get as high an enjoyment as I did the first time that I read it. And
I still not read the last one.
you haven't?
No.
Did you fall out of love, or you're just like
Had
not
to
willing
wait down for it to come out, and then
Okay.
I forgot most of what happened, and then I've just not been able to get the appetite to go back to it.
Yeah,
I
that's
do
fair.
want to eventually, but I also know that providing she doesn't ruin it like some other series that we talked about before we started recording, that I know roughly what the ending's probably going to end up as, because so in my head I'm like, I know they win, I just don't know how they win.
I'm obviously not going to say anything.
So in my headcanon, they win, regardless of whether that's the truth or not, because I've still not read it.
Yeah.
But I'm interested that you went Tower of Dawn. Not Tower of Dawn, the Tower of Dawn and Empire of Storms. But yeah, specifically Empire of Storms, it is one of the best ones, I think. Very good.
I just love the idea that she set these two on the same timeline
Yeah.
so that you actually could have that experience together, I think.
Yeah, I always love when people read that series for the first time and then they get past, obviously, Empire of Storms. And by that point, they hate Kale if they're worth anything.
Yeah.
And they're like, why has she written a whole book about Kale? Why would anybody want?
Especially given, so Empire of Storms is book 6 and it ends on a huge cliffhanger.
Yeah.
And then you get to book
And then
7
they're like, we're going
and
back
it
in
goes
here.
back to the start of where book 6 is set and you're like, no, I'm an impatient woman. Yeah, so I can see why people dislike Tower of Dawn. I actually quite enjoyed it when I read it. So.
I make fun of it. I didn't hate it because I didn't hate Kale as much as I should, because I don't know, I've come to the conclusion, actually, he's the only normal person in the series. His reactions and the things that he says about everyone are actually true, but because you like all of the other characters, you're willing to indulge their toxic traits.
Agree.
Whereas he's calling people out on their nonsense and saying, but we don't do that, do we?
This series, though, like, it had to be in there. I thought of so many different series because I do love a series. But I just remember finishing Empire of Storms and feeling such shock and outrage and thinking, genuinely panicking about what was going to happen to the characters. And I think if you're in that sort of emotional state, you don't feel fully invested.
Yes. We're past the halfway point. We're on the penultimate book. What's the fourth book you'll be taking with you?
Okay, so this is the one that I've most recently read on the list. And it's one I never would have picked up without a book club member suggesting it. So every month I say to people, give me your ideas. I'll go away and read them. If I think they'll work as book club books, like, put it on. And still, bless it, She suggested this book called Slug by Holly McNish. And I looked into it, and it was a collection of poems. And I thought to myself, like, I really don't want to do poetry. That's so dry. It took me straight back to doing it. And I was like, poems are for analysing, they're not for enjoying. But for the sake of like humouring her and saying, I read it, I don't think it's going to work, I got it. And oh my God, I'm ready to eat all of my words. This has just opened my eyes to how good poetry can be. And they're not all about nature. I thought poetry is about nature and waffling on about romantic situations. These poems are real. And like, some of them brought me to tears. And I thought, what is going on?
I actually read some of the poems from Slog. Not all of them. But I did a reading circle with, shout out to Ruth from Drop City Books. She did a mom's reading circle. So she did a child-free reading circle. Then she did like a mum and baby reading circle. And I took my little girl with me. And she had a bunch of selected, some from Slug, some from another book. And she read them out and we would discuss these different things. Because a lot of them do have themes with like childhood and like motherhood and that sort of thing. And they are really interesting, sort of powerful pieces. I have a very complicated relationship with all of those topics. So even though I got given the book, I'm very graciously gifted it by Ruth, courtesy of the Newcastle Business District. Feel free to sponsor the podcast. I was given a copy, so I do actually have it at home, ready to read all. And I'm going to make myself read it, even though I don't usually read essays or poetry, because I feel like it will be enriching and positive experience for me mentally. I'm just not mentally in the place for it at the moment. But I'm really glad that you've got it on your list because it's a really different kind of pick. And it's a powerful book. And some of them are very emotional, sort of.
They are.
And I think it's a good one to start off with if you're not someone who's very into poetry.
Absolutely. And it's not all just poems either. So what I really loved is Holly's kind of put this collection together of short stories, anecdote, essays, prose, and she slots the poems in at a perfect point. And she gives a lot of context to what she was trying to do with the poem, what inspired it, how she came into the emotion that she was in at the time, which really helped me as a non-poetry reader to be like, oh, I actually understand what this is about.
Yeah.
And I went back and looked at some of the titles of them to pick out some of my favourites. And I think even the titles just show you that this is accessible. Some of my favourites. The Day I Stopped Nicking Tea Bags from Hotels. If Flowers Had Disposable Income. And similes about how much I miss my gran. Like, even that one straight away. And I just thought, what a wonderful book to be able to pick up if you're alone and you're searching for a bit of comfort.
Yeah. One of the ways Ruth recommended it, especially to a circle full of mums who have not had a great deal of time to read at that point, because I think all of the babies there quite young, was, because it's essays and poetry, it's quite short things. You could pick it up and put it down. And you don't need to remember everything that's going on with it.
That is a good point as well. And I think picking it up in my late 20s as I am, when all of my friends are going on these different journeys with motherhood, I think it gives you a bit of an appreciation for some of the things that are going on, which I have no idea about, but it's only through reading, for me personally, that I can get even an inkling of some of those emotions.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people, especially, I don't think there's enough writing and people who talk about, you can have a friend, like, you can have friends for 15, 20 years, but if the two of you enter this particular, because everyone's lives develop at different stages and you can do different things, but it's not one of you like buying your own place or moving into your own place whilst the other person doesn't actually make as big a difference to the dynamics of friendship as if one of you has kids and the other doesn't have them for quite a long while afterwards. And it's a really, from both perspectives, the person who had the kids trying to keep up with a friend who doesn't have the kids and vice versa, and is a really just like, it's a really weighted topic that actually shouldn't be, and it does change a lot of like relationship dynamics in a way that you would think, oh, this friendship's the same, it's been the same for however many years, decades, and then it does just change, basically. Not even overnight, gradually over the course of about 9 months, it changes.
Of course.
So yeah, it's a really interesting collection, and the ones that I've heard were there was one about she was talking about jumping on top of a pin as a child, and it was just talking about what kids actually remember, which
Yes.
is a nice one.
It's very nice. And I totally agree with you. Like, sometimes what you need is to have empathy. And it can be so easy to dismiss what's all going on or just not even think about it because you're not in that situation. But when you read something that so powerfully and succinctly explains a situation, you can be like, wow, I need to reach out to that person. I need to be there in that context.
Yeah, especially because a lot of mothers, especially new mothers, find it really hard to be brutally honest about what it's actually like to have kids. Because I think there's a lot of pressure on women to feel like they're completely happy with how things have turned out. And everything's going swimmingly and perfectly to plan. They've got everything together and it's completely fine. And even when things that they let cracks show, there is like a judgment that's put on women who are way more honest about what it can actually feel like to have kids. And so a lot of people don't let that guard down. I often get a lot of raised eyebrows and interested look because I don't sugarcoat anything. I love my kids to bits. I love the fact that I'm a mom, but I'm not going to lie to anyone and tell them that it's not incredibly hard and not very fun quite a lot of the time.
And I don't at the end, so like people feel judged for not having kids. Holly then talks about she gets judged because she's only had one kid. And people are like, you're not giving her a princess.
Oh yeah, you're being selfish by not having
it. Just never ends, no matter what you do.
You're
gonna have opinions. And like we need to be there for each other and say, just ignore it, you're doing great.
Exactly. I try and remind people that actually the default position isn't having kids. The default position is not having kids because everyone starts off with no kids. It's an active choice to have one or more than one. So I think, there's judgment no matter what you do. So you may as well just do what you want.
Yeah.
Basically.
And I've also been, say, I'm sat in this fantasy cafe reading a book called Slug. Someone's going to approach me and be like, hey, I love slugs. And I'll be like, no, sit down. Let me tell you about these. I'll read one for you. Be my friend. And then it's this great conversation started.
Perfect. Okay. We're on the last book. The final book. What are you?
So this is another contemporary one. And it is a comfort read. But I've also chosen it because it's pivoted my life in new ways, which sounds dramatic. But the first that I decided to start an Instagram page of. Because I wanted to talk to that many people about it.
Yeah.
And none of my friends would listen to me or I would bore them. And they'd be like, oh, that's nice. Let's talk about something else. And I thought, I cannot shut up about this. So I started my book page. And then when I did my first book club, it was the first book that we did as well. And without those two kind of experiences, I wouldn't be in the position I am today. So I picked it up a lot. But it's The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo.
Okay.
Kiss read. On the surface, it's just a contemporary romance fic, but I actually loved that unexpected, and it did genuinely surprise me the first time I read it. And I also think that I love a list. So when I understood that it was like, okay, we're going to go through the 7 husbands, I was like, great, it's got this structure. I'm here. I know what's going to happen. And yet still I didn't know what's actually going to happen.
Yeah, it's one I've heard so much about. Taylor Jenkins Reid is an author that I've not found a book of hers that I've enjoyed the 2 books of hers that I've read, but I'm not in love with any of them in particular. I do want to get around to 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. It's quite funny because I read, around about the time that came out, I read The 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle.
Which I found very confusing.
Which is one of my favourite books of all time. And I found it really funny because I've got an American copy, because I got given an American ARC copy of it, and it was The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. Because apparently his publishers made him, Stuart Turton, change the title because in the American market, there's just not enough room for 2 7-somethings of Evelyn.
Wow.
It needs to be 7.5 because it needs to differentiate itself. Because otherwise, we're all going to think they're from the same world, and they're absolutely not.
I think that makes it sound more like a series, though, and people be like, "Oh, you read 7 first, then you read 7.5."
But I have heard so much about 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, so I'm getting mixed up now. It's been a big book for quite a lot of people, very kind of influential in that sort of way. Is it the first of her books that you'd read?
It's not the first. The first one that I read was Daisy Jones and the Six,
which is one of the ones I've read.
Which I was so confused about because I was reading it thinking, this is not fiction. I've never heard of this band. And then I'm searching them on Spotify and I'm like, so confused. And then I'm like, oh, it's fiction.
She is that good, though. She makes it feel very real in terms of music documentary. It feels authentically like a band. It's very heavily influenced by Fleetwood Mac.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then after that, I read After I Do, I think, which I also really enjoyed. And then The Seven Husbands came like third, but probably blew me away the most. And it's also, so for anyone who hasn't read it, the story is a glamorous Hollywood actress at the end of her life decides that she wants to tell everyone the story of the fame and scandal surrounding her 7 marriages. And you get that glamorous setting of Hollywood in this golden era. You get all of the drama from the papers. It's got a lot of newspaper clippings in, and over time you're piecing together this story. But at the same time, you're in the present day thinking, why has she decided to tell the story? Like, where is this all going?
Yeah. It's in the style of an interview with a journalist, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think I liked that it wasn't one thing.
Yeah, I've heard lots of really good things about it. And I know it was, a big book for some people. Obviously, we can't talk too much about it.
I don't want to ruin it for anyone.
I know what happens because it's hard not to know what happens if you're spending time on Instagram with people who have read it. But it's a really interesting one, a really interesting concept. And really rounds off your list. You've got quite a wide-ranging...
Trying to cover as much base as I can. The only thing I haven't got is more of a suspenseful one. But I did think, once you've read it once and you know what happens, you're not going to get that repeat value from it.
Yeah.
And like I said, I'm trying to go for things that I know is going to keep me occupied for however long I'm stuck in this cafe.
Almost exclusively female authors as well, which is actually rare.
It's not unusual for me. Like as much as I say diversify yourself, I do gravitate a lot.
This time, as long as it's mostly...
In the book club, I do have to think about the options a lot more and think this diverse representation because I will automatically go to pick up books by women. There are male authors that I like, but just not.
Yeah, completely understandable. Were there any, actually, recap all 5 books you picked then so that people can run off to their local independent bookstore and buy them?
Amazing. We're starting in the Regency period with Pride and Prejudice, specifically the copy with the letters included. We're then sticking in classic territories with The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. We're then going fantasy, and I'm sneakily sticking in the tandem read because you can buy the 2 books in one binding, which counts as one book. So that's Empire and Storms and Tower of Dawn. Then I've got my poetry short story collection, which is Slug. And lastly, I've got a contemporary romance, which is Seven Husbands of Evelyn Duke.
Wonderful. What were some books that you nearly picked but didn't buy?
Like I said to you, I spent a lot of time deliberating this list, testing it out on people. No one was fully convinced. Some of the ones that should have maybe gone in that I did consider. One of them is Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton, where she's explaining how at each decade of her life, her perspective on romantic relationships and friendships have changed. But I thought, you know what, I'm going to opt for Slug over that because I think it covers a bit more topics and I really like the poem. Another one was a historical pick, which was In Memoriam by Alice Wynne, which is...
Yes, I've seen it. The book has the cover.
It's set in World War I, and it's about 2 boys that meet and fall in love at a boarding school, but obviously at the time unacceptable, and they both get drafted into the war, and it's very kind of compelling and graphic tale of what happens to them and how it was sold as a dream to these young boys. What it was really like, but then I thought I might be quite sad that I'm on my own anyway to then add that in. I said I struggled with series. There were so many series that I did think of. So Thursday Murder Club is one of my favourites at the moment, but I couldn't choose one out. Confessions of a Shopaholic is a series that I fell in love with as a teenager, and I've only ever seen the movie with Isla Fisher. It's probably not.
Is it Isla Fisher or is it Amy Adams? I always get them mixed. Anyway, sorry, go on.
But I think it's better. My teenage memory and probably wouldn't translate that well to like current day. And also I thought maybe nostalgia isn't the best way to go in that setting because again it made me miss my mom because we always used to chat about that and I used to nick them off her Bridgerton, but I think the TV series is better.
The TV series is better than the books.
So weirdly I'd just be like, oh, I wish I'd watched the TV series.
Yeah. Even if I don't agree with some of the choices that were made, the TV series is like quantifiably better. Although I do have a soft spot for some of them.
I do.
The Viscount Who Loved Me is just like one of my favourites.
Yeah, which one's my favourite?
Well, and it was Wicked or The Viscount Who Loved Me. One of those two.
Wicked, aka 50 Shades of Grey. Like, where does that come from? It's so strange.
is nowhere near as I am offended that you would compare my dear Michael into
Prejudice. I'm like, wow, we've gone for this then domination. It's fine. Where has this come from?
I think a lot of told you about the spin of that one.
Maybe I've embellished a bit. I said,
I have, because I'm pretty sure that it's not.
I think I just shared at one point and there's like a clip of it. And maybe I'm going,
There was definitely not an equipment and there was a gardener's cottage.
this is what I'm thinking of, a gardener's cottage. Maybe I need to go back and reread this one.
No idea. I would read that if they wanted to reread it.
Bridgerton meets 50.
Yes, anyway, so Bridgerton, yes, is a decent series, but the TV show is better.
Yeah. Oh no, I think that is probably the end. I'm sure I will lay awake at night tonight and be like, I never mentioned the script, so I'll just message you and be like, by the way.
Well, if anybody wanted to find out some more books that would have made the list, but you forgot to mention, where can people come to you to find your book recommendations or anything?
So I'm on Instagram as Meg's Reading Spot. And if you are local to Stoke-on-Trent and want to join the book club, it's Meg's Reading Club, so that I can remember them both.
Brilliant. And I definitely recommend any locals, definitely go check out Meg's Reading Club. And if not, you're not local, sadly, and you're international, definitely follow her over on Instagram. And yeah, check out those recommendations, that endless list of books that you can recommend. If people want to follow the podcast, we're at BooksLastPod on just Instagram, because it's the only one I can find. Energy.
That was very little energy. I completely out.
It is the only social media I can find any time for, and even then it's quite a push. But yes, at BooksLastPod, follow the podcast anywhere where podcasts are found. And if you have the time and you could leave a review or a star rating, that would be very much appreciated, because it apparently does help people find podcasts. All of those people you've listened to on podcasts who've said that before, they're not lying to you. That is a fact.
Do it.
I Googled it. So, thank you so much for coming on. Discussion. I had so much fun. Listeners, thank you so much for listening. And until next time, bye for now.
Bye.